So, all we've done so far is kind of play with the face. That's all I've sort of shown you. Um, since then, I have worked on the hair some. I actually intended to record a video, and I didn't realize that I had the screen captured off, and so it only recorded audio. So that was useful. But you can sort of see here what I've done. And so, starting with the midtone, adding some darks, lots of darks in this case, and then adding some highlights. And I haven't smoothed out the highlights yet. Now, something to note, the midtone for his hair is darker than the midtone for his face because, well, the mid values of his hair are darker than the mid values of his face. So that is something that I did there. If you start with a lighter one, it's not going to really be a midtone, and you're probably going to get a little frustrated. So, I guess what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back and redo some of the work to sort of show you sort of how I'm doing this. So let's pretend that layer 2 and layer 3 doesn't exist. So I'm going to go ahead and make a new one. I'm going to go ahead and make a folder as well. Does not exist. We'll drop this in there, and we'll drop that in there. Alright. Oh, stop that. And we'll drag this above. And so, there we go. Alright, so we'll close that, we'll hide that, and here we go. So before I really start coloring, I need to choose a value. So I'm going to go with a dark value, and it's almost black. It's almost pure black. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my midtone, and I'm going to sort of reduce the opacity a bit to where I can see what's underneath it, but so I can also see where I actually stripe on things. This is not how I'm used to looking at this. What did I do? Ah, small thumbnails. There we go. Stroke thumbnail. This isn't quite what I'm used to seeing. Text only. Nope, 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 nope. Small list. Nope. Alright, I guess small thumbnails what I'm used to. Just doesn't feel right now. Alright. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to start putting down some of my dark values. It's interesting too because when I add this midtone here, you can start to see where some of the blacks aren't completely black. You can start to see some of these lighter areas that you couldn't see before. Alright, so now I'm just going to go and I'm going to start coloring. I'm going to go ahead and blow this up too, so that way it's just a little bit easier to work with and to see what I'm looking at. So, once again, I'm just going to be pretty rough with it because I can edit it later. And being pretty rough with it allows me to be pretty fast, which then allows me to go in sooner and start actually trying to perfect things. So because I've lightened all of the tones in his hair, it's a little bit harder to see exactly where some of those really dark areas are because nothing is really dark now. But that's okay. Because it will also be easier when I actually start going in with the smudge tool to actually figure out where I need to smudge and where I need to lighten some things. I'm probably not going to be as careful this time as I was the first time because, as I revealed already, I've already done this. And it was pretty time consuming the first time. Also, I guess you don't really need to see every single little thing because there's quite a bit of repetition in some of this. And even some of this is even fairly repetitive because, you know, it's almost like muscle memory. You're almost like just kind of going autopilot. And that can be really easy to do, and that's one of the reasons why I like adding on this transparent layer underneath, because then I can see where I need to go with the lines instead of just making them up in my head. Alright, I think that's pretty good. So now I'm going to use the smudge tool. Now, when we were doing the skin tones, the smudge tool was on strength 50. But when I'm doing hair, I typically like to up it quite a bit, so like 80 or 90, and it's going to vary depending on your subject matter. So with 90, you can see that I can really pull these streaks really far, and that will give it more of a hair-like look instead of sort of those soft, short smudges that you see on like skin. I can also change which brush I'm using. So maybe I don't want to use that brush. Maybe I want to use something more like this. Well, no, I don't want to use that. Just kidding. Different brushes have different effects, and you have to find a brush that works for you. By switching brushes around, you can maybe save yourself some time. Like so. Maybe. That doesn't work quite as well as I had hoped. Maybe one of these. Nope. That's pretty nice. That gives me sort of a nice hair look to it really quickly. Or, well, pretty quickly. Not super quickly, but pretty quickly. Oops. I wonder if... what's thickness do? No! Stiffness. So I'm not really trying to be perfect here. I'm just trying to sort of get like sort of the hair-like direction and sort of a painterly effect. So it's okay to be sloppy here. It's sort of part of sort of the method. And once again, like if you're not comfortable doing this, like that's fine. Like there's lots of ways that you can do this. If you just Google it or like YouTube it, like there are tons of different ways you can do this. Alright, and even that looks fairly painterly. So now I can come in with like a small brush and like shrink it down and sort of fine-tuning where some of these things go. It's getting a bit hard to see, so I think I'm going to duplicate this, and I think I'm going to do something crazy with it, like adjustments, hue and saturation, colorize, just to really sort of be able to see hopefully what I'm looking at. Okay. Drop this opacity down as well. So now I can definitely see much better what I'm actually looking at. This down to back to 90. And so now I'm just going in and I'm just very carefully, well, I'm not really that carefully, but just painstakingly adding in where these lines should go, just following his natural the natural lines of his hair to try to get that likeness. And there's not really, in my opinion, there's not really a fast way to do this. I mean, there are some shortcuts you can try to take here and there, but in my opinion, they don't look right. I don't like how they look. I like being able to do this by hand. Well, I don't like being able to do it by hand. I like the look that this gets better, and the level of control that I have by being able to do this by hand, by choosing to do this by hand. Just put a little bit there. Definitely not looking amazing, but it is looking fairly painterly at least. And a hair just takes, in my opinion, a long time, or at least for me it does. I think hair is a very defining feature of somebody, and so I typically spend the time that I think it needs to try to produce a likeness. I was trying to hotkey it to go back, but I'm not using a standard keyboard and the buttons are in the wrong spot, so I couldn't remember what the combination is on this keyboard because the buttons are not labeled accurately. Most of the hotkeys I can normally remember pretty easy, even on this like weird non-standard keyboard, but to move further back in the history, just couldn't remember that one. That was why I opened the history. Otherwise, I would have just done it with a hotkey. So he's got like this bit here, and that's what I'm trying to work on now. Is trying to get that bit in there where his hair kind of sweeps over his ear. Not super strong, but enough to notice. And I think that's definitely a defining feature of his hairstyle. So I want to make sure that that's in there. And we don't want it to be super strong. It's just enough. So something like that, right? And then down here we've got some interesting stuff going on. So I think that's important too. It gives sort of a waviness to his hair. Otherwise it looks like it's just kind of straight down, but actually his hair is pretty wavy. It's just so short that a lot of people probably don't notice. So I'm pushing up this darkness. Keep in mind, I'm not spreading the light gray right now. I'm actually pushing up the black as I'm doing this. It's not the gray that I'm moving, it's the black. So just keep that in mind. And trying to get sort of some of those little wavy bits in there. If I'm having a lot of trouble with it, I can always go in and erase some. And then rework sort of that in, because that's going to allow me a lot more lightness. I just need to make sure that I smudge all those little eraser marks away. I probably should have used a different brush actually. Do I still have that in my history? Nope, it's gone. Too far back. So hopefully you're starting to get the idea of what you can do. Even with just a few simple tools in Photoshop, you can do so much with it if you start to understand the way they work and what you can do with them. I'm going to go ahead and stop. I think I'll just stop recording for a little while and then come back towards the end and sort of show you where he is now.